Good afternoon, and thank you for joining me today. My name is Tanya Eni, and I'm with Alliance Solutions Group, and I'll be taking you through an overview of Sage Intacct Financial and looking at a modern construction financials. A few housekeeping items before we get started. We've got everybody put on mute just to have a cleaner recording, which if we do get a clean recording, we'll send it out after this webinar. And if you've got any questions, please put them in the chat. We will try to get to them at the end if we have time. If not, a rep will be following up with any questions that you do have, as well as sending you a recording. So with that, why don't we take a look at Sage Intacct's Modern Construction Financials. Now, you have all probably seen information about Sage Intacct, emails. There's been a lot of emails that have gone out, a lot of buzz about Sage Intacct. So what is Sage Intacct? Well, it's really a best-in-class ERP solution. You know, at the core, it is a accounts payable, receivable, job costing, PO, report writing, general ledger solution. But it's so much more. It offers bank feeds to be able to connect into your bank and download accounting bank transactions. It has an open API. There's an additional budgeting and planning module that's beyond the basic budgeting module that's in here if you need some advanced budgeting and planning options. It's completely cloud-based. You can build in workflow approvals. It also handles expense reports. There's extensive dashboards that you can build. There's an inventory module. We can set up allocation. It can handle multi-currency if you do have a need for that, as well as intercompany. We can build out prepaid expense amortization and automate that. And it even has a fixed asset module that can handle your depreciation. So there's a lot to Sage Intacct, whether you're just looking for the core product or you have some needs for some of these add-on modules. So let's get into talking about modern financials. What do modern financials look like? Well, I think that they look like that I can drill down and access my data. Most users these days want a system where they can double click on a number and get down to source transaction information. They also want access to real-time data. They don't want to have to build their reports out in Excel with data that's become stale. They want to have their financials. They want to be able to pull them up anytime they want and access that information in real time. They want to automate data delivery, being able to send out reports automatically without having to do it themselves. They want to smooth export to Excel. They don't want to have to reformat their financials every time they decide they want to export something out into Excel. They want the option of being able to view their financials in a dashboard view, because sometimes a picture can tell so much more than a report. They want to see a consolidated view, not only of entities, but also divisions or departments. However they've structured the company, they want to see it consolidated, but the option to break it down. With on-the-fly filtering, I want to be able to sort by a specific division or entity or department. And they want an easy report writer, something that I can do myself, that I don't have to hire a consultant to do or spend hours and hours trying to understand something that looks like programming that I'm not quite sure if I've selected the right cell. And they want a flexible work breakdown structure, something that they're used to with what you have right now with your Sage system. Now, unfortunately, what does most of our financials look like right now? Well, they look like this typically. A lot of Excel spreadsheets, exporting data out to Excel, formatting into what I want to get. Very time consuming, and it's not real-time data. I can't drill back to anything. Now with Intacct, how can we accomplish getting those flexible, modern construction financials that we want to see? Well, it starts with a very modern general ledger, one that I don't have to batch post, one that doesn't use prefixes and I have 25-digit accounts, one that allows me to have multiple books. So if I want to have a tax book, I can create a user-defined book for more flexible reporting. One that gives me the ability to create statistical journals So I can record non-financial information that I can report on, for example, square footage of property purchase. So I can then see revenue by square foot. If I'm a company that has multiple entities under one roof, well, I can consolidate within minutes, not necessarily days. With Sage Intacct, we use the concept of what's called a top level. This is a consolidated level where it totals up all my different entities into one. But through filtering, I can filter down to a particular company, or for better security, I can also restrict users to particular companies. So they may only be able to access one or two companies on that list, but still be able to consolidate those companies they have access to. Now, how does Sage do all this? Well, it starts with our dimensions. This is a very different concept from what a lot of Sage 300 users are used to. Most of the time, Sage 300 users, if they have a different companies and different divisions and departments, those all become prefixes that create a very, very long general ledger account number. But with Intacct, we use dimensions. These are tags that we can put on a transaction. So I can tag a transaction with a location, a department, maybe even a customer and employee. So I could easily filter a financial by a department or by a particular customer. We also can filter by specialty dimensions. So I could tag a transaction that's tied to a job that we're used to doing, maybe even a project manager. Imagine being able to produce an income statement very quickly by a job or a project manager, something that would probably be time consuming right now. We also have dependent dimensions like cost codes and cost types. Now, how do these dimensions work? Well, when I'm entering a transaction, right now, if I was to code it to a division and department, it would be something like 10-22- general ledger account number. But with Intacct, I would simply code it to that general ledger account number, but then tag it to the sales department or to the HR department, or maybe to a specific project, depending on the account number I'm coding to. By tagging it to all these different dimensions, I can then pull that information out. So here is an example of different departments. I've got sales department, services department, but when I look at it over here on my income statement, instead of just seeing revenue as a total, I've asked it to expand by that different department. Now I can see that I've got this much coming from sales and this much coming from services. And I did that all by saying, expand and show me those dimensions. I didn't have to build separate financials to tally all this up. I just asked it to expose that, and we'll see how that works. Now, I also have the option of using those dimensions in like a pivot form, that I've got a different column for each location, what's going on in the Boston location versus the San Francisco location. I can expand a particular account by another type of dimension, which would be the vendor, seeing where I'm spending my money on utilities and facilities. Our dimension gives us a lot of reporting flexibility. Here, when I'm entering the bill in, I can see down at the bottom that I've coded it to the general ledger account, but then I've also selected that dimension for the location as well as that dimension for the department, allowing me, as you saw, to be able to slice and dice that data. I can do the same thing with the project. I'm able to set up I have that same structure that I'm used to in my Sage 300 with my job, my cost code, and my cost type. Allowing in Sage Intacct, it lets me get one more level, a little bit more granular, because each cost type or cost code can have children. So this equipment is an example that I've coded to equipment, but I can even go one level further and say, well, is it rental equipment or owned equipment? Then it can roll up to equipment, which can roll up to concrete, which could roll up to the project, giving me that work breakdown structure. Here's another example of my concrete division or cost code with all the children cost codes underneath it. So I have the option of summarizing all this detail by this one cost code, or seeing it all expanded by all the details. By utilizing cost types, this is where we control where the information is posted to in the general ledger. A user simply has to pick that this is a material cost, and it knows automatically to code it to this general ledger account. So all these different pieces go into giving us this flexible reporting that so many of us are looking for. So let's go take a look in Sage Intacct. Upon entering Sage Intacct, you notice right away that it's cloud-based. I'm logged into my browser, and as I log in, my login is going to control what I have access to. And my login is taking me directly to a dashboard. You can have multiple dashboards in your system, customizing it for different purposes, different roles in the company, because each of us may want to look at different things. If I'm the controller, accounting, and somebody in accounting, I perhaps want to see something more financial related. But if I'm on the project side, I probably want to look at something that's related a little bit more towards project and less related to accounting, like my balance sheet or income statement. Now, all this information I'm able to access and drill into. So as I review my dashboard, as I have questions, anything that's in blue is a hyperlink, and I can choose to drill down, whether that's drilling into where did this contract revenue come from, and seeing all the transactions and continuing to drill down to view an individual transaction, or one of my KPIs up here that I can drill into. I see that payroll expense is up, so I go ahead and can click on it, and it drills me in to that excerpt of the general ledger that I can then continue drilling down into and get all the way back to my transaction, where I can see that a journal entry was made to record this payroll transaction, and somebody even attached backup that I can drill back into and see the details on. So being able to drill down to source transactions right from my dashboard screen. Now, we talked about consolidated. So for those of you that have multiple entities, you can have this concept of this top level, which is really a consolidated level. So at this level, I've got all these other companies underneath this. But what I'm looking at right now is a consolidated dashboard, all my different companies added together. Now I can choose to filter, whether I want to filter by a specific company. Maybe I want to filter by this Timberline Construction Group. I can apply that filter. And now it's updated this with just information for that particular company. I can remove that filter, and I now see back to my consolidated view. Now, depending on what my dashboard is, I may have projects incorporated in that. I may have different locations, different departments, but all of it allows for me to quickly filter, selecting that particular project, selecting that particular location or department, applying that filter and seeing that information quickly. I'm not having to run a separate report or multiple reports because all these dashboard items are filtered based on that information. And there's quite a bit of report type information on here. So with a lot of systems, we're so used to getting our data in a report format, very flat. Sometimes it doesn't really tell the story. But with a dashboard, it tells a little bit more of a story. I can quickly glance and see things that may catch my eye. Cash is up or cash is down. Changes to AP that I can then quickly click on and drill into. Or perhaps I want to see a graph or chart, keeping an eye on my cash balance, being able to quickly see profit and loss. A lot of times a graph is going to be really quick to point at, just to spot a job that's more profitable versus one that's not. We can also make statistical journal entries, like for example, here is square footage, and then I can build that into my report, being able to create formulas utilizing that statistical information instead of having to go outside to Excel. So really my goal with a modern financial platform is to be able to have all my information in one place, not have to go to Excel or other reporting tools to access that information. Now with this dashboard, I have the flexibility of customizing it. I can add in new components. I can remove components that I don't utilize a lot. I can also have different dashboards. Here we're looking at a financial one, but maybe I'm on the project side and I want to see more project performance. So this report focuses more on projects. Here I see all my different types of projects, but perhaps I'm just interested in how the warehouse projects are doing. So I come in here and filter by that type of project, and now I'm seeing just warehouse projects. Individual income statements on each. Each has a hyperlink to drill down to more detail so I can access more information. Now dates can also act as filters. Notice that I'm back in last year. I can change this date and pick a date that I want to go back to. Maybe I want to look at what's going on last month or last year. I can quickly refilter my dashboard and see that information as well. Now for me, being able to customize what I review is so important. So not only can I customize my dashboard and add in different components that make my job easier, for example, this checklist. This is a newer feature that Sage added. They do 4 quarterly releases, and this came out in the February release. This is a checklist for month end that all the users can see. I can see who's assigned to what and who's completed what. We also have an internal communication tool that's called Chatter. This allows me to add comments on transactions that become part of the audit history. Those transactions can be directed at specific users, and they will either see it show up here in this bubble, this chat bubble at the top of their screen, or if they choose to follow it on their dashboard, they'll see that running Chatter commentary. But what's great about Chatter is that I can drill right back into the transaction that somebody has a question on, and I can review that question. Here I can see that Tanya asked Karen to attach something, and I could see the attachment here. And then this conversation lives with this transaction. I could attach files, I can link to other sites, and just add in comments. It's a great internal tool as we all email each other, hundreds and hundreds of times over the course of the day and week. And sometimes looking for something from one of our colleagues can be very difficult because we have so many emails from them. This keeps it within the system for everyone to have access to, and it's quick to find when I'm looking at a transaction months from now and wondering why this journal entry was made. I'll have the whole history there to show me. Now, looking at this dashboard, I showed you how you can drill down into it. But what if I want to change just really how this financial income statement looks? Well, in most systems, that's usually a call to a consultant or a couple, 3, 4, 8 hours of working on a report. But with Intacct, I can drill right into this income statement and get right into my financial report writer, which is really set up like a wizard. Because a report is really just made up of columns and rows. And so I can start off with reviewing the rows in the report writer. So here it's going to show me high level sales revenue, contract revenue. But what if I want to expose more information? I want to know where that contract revenue is coming from on my financial. Is it coming from just one job or multiple projects? Well, utilizing that dimension that we talked about, I can expose that dimensional information. So I want to see project dimensional information on my income statement. Now, when I first come into the report writer, I have the option to duplicate the report as to leave the original alone and me make changes to a duplicate copy. Or if I don't, I always have an audit trail to go back to see what I did. So let's preview how the report looks now by adding in that I want to see the project dimension. So now suddenly this report is showing me, instead of just knowing I had $638,000 in contract revenue this month, I can see specifically where that revenue is coming from. It was coming from these 3 different projects. And it was just that easy. I went into that that row, and I added in that information, asking it to show me the dimension of the project. Now I also can alter my columns. Right now, these columns are comparing a budget to an actual and giving me a variance. Well, in any of one of these columns, I define what I want to see, and it's all in very simple, easy to understand language. What type of information do you want in this column? Do you want actual numbers or do you want budgeted information? What do you want to see? Do you want the reporting period to be for a current month or for a quarter or a year? How do you want each of the columns? Do you want just to be one column, just the total for that period of time you selected, or do you want to expand each column and show a column for each different department or project? This is where we can get quickly income statements by project just by asking Sage Intacct to expand by project. It's all very easy to scroll through and make selections, even doing some conditional highlighting. Maybe I want to highlight each cell that's at 0 or anything that's below $1,000. I can set up rules and have that highlighted right on my report. Of course, we can do calculations, this column divided by that column. We can add in filters. Do we want to see a date range? Do we want to see by a certain dimension? And we can control who has access to the report. Is it everybody, or is it just a certain group of users, or is it just your report? And then we have the option of scheduling the report. We have the option of saving it to our dashboard, so this new report can now be added to the dashboard for us to view that expanded dimensional information. So with the financial report writer in here, I'm really able to get exactly what I want to see. Now in running reports, whether they're financial based or they're project based, we do have the option to export this report information out to Excel. So here I'll just run a basic WIP report. This WIP report has columns and rows. It's already sort of laid out in Excel version. I'm going to go ahead and click export and export it out to Excel. And it downloads it down to the bottom of my system tray here. And when we open up this report, we'll see it looks pretty much identical to what we're reviewing back here on the screen. Once I click Enable Editing, it's really ready for me to go to start making additional modifications. I don't have to do a lot of reformatting to get it to look like what I saw on my original screen. When I go to run reports, I always have the option to email them directly out of here, add it back to the dashboard, or of course, be able to export those reports out to Excel. So as we talked about, some of the backbone of our financials is our general ledger, whether that is setting up your chart of accounts, creating different transactions through our different general ledger or ledgers. Here we see all our different journals for accounts payable, equipment, cash receipts, etc. We also can make those statistical journal entries, and right from the general ledgers where we can run a lot of our traditional financial reports. But as we begin to build custom reports, we'll see all the custom reports we've created over here, or reports that we've memorized that we like to run. Running reports such as the general ledger, Intacct gives the user a lot of options for customizing how they want the output of the report. What time period do we want? As I scroll down, I can also pick the dimensions to be different filters within the report. Again, once I've made my selections, I can choose to view, print, or of course, export out to Excel. So we talked about the ability to drill down. We looked at modifying reports, building out our dashboards. These are all really the components that so many users today are looking for in a new financial accounting solution. And Sage Intacct really fits that bill of giving the user the flexibility to customize what they want to see, how they want to see it on a daily basis. Whether it's utilizing the dashboards and building out custom reports that lay on my dashboards, or just building reports that I can use to email and send out to other users. Sage Intacct's going to give you that flexibility. So I left a little time for questions. Let me look over here at the questions and see if we have any. I see a couple over here that I have some time to answer. One of the questions was, does Sage Intacct connect to my credit cards so I can download? It in fact does. So many users these days are using more and more credit cards. And within the cash management module, I do have the ability to record credit card charges, but these also can be connected. Similar to bank fees, I can connect to my credit card and have Sage bring in all those credit card transactions and really do a continuous reconciliation of my credit card. New transactions that post come in, I can match them to anything that's already in the system, or I can enter in that unposted transaction. I see we got another question. Can I attach backup files? You can. When you're entering a transaction, say an accounts payable bill, you have the ability to drag and drop an attachment. That could be something you drag and drop, or you can choose to just attach it by clicking the attachment button here and adding that as an attachment. So that's all the time we have today. Thank you so much for attending our Sage Intacct webinar on modern construction financials. We'll be sure to send out a copy of this recording once it's downloaded, and your rep will be following up if there's any other questions that you have, or if you'd like to schedule a demo, we'd be happy to show you a more in-depth look at Sage Intacct. Thank you for joining us today.